Welcome back to the Bold Moves podcast. We are glad that you're with us today. Give it up for Corey, Kristen. Guys, let's do this. We're diving into this topic today of being focused on the one future that we have. And it's kind of crazy when you try to stop and think about just grappling with the idea of eternity. Can we just stop and think about that?
Ouch! Why are you making me think about that?
I didn't know it was going to be that painful. For everybody watching, wherever you are, I'm so sorry. If you had that same response wherever you're like driving the car, working out at the gym, I don't know what's happening.
Yep.
But when you stop and think about the idea, like theologically, God has no beginning. He has always been. He exists outside of time as we know it. And when you try to think about that, like literally, you can think about that for about 30 seconds and then it just hurts.
Yeah.
Like it hurts your brain. Anybody
got to move on after that.
Yeah. You just can't even fathom it. And then similarly, to think about the fact that when we take our last breath on planet Earth and we step into eternity, into the presence of Jesus, that is the beginning of forever.
Oh yeah.
Like, and then try to wrap your mind around that.
Right.
I don't exactly remember. I just remember being a kid, probably like 10 years old, trying to think about that myself then.
Yes.
I remember driving to church and like thinking about that and realizing, oh, that's a scary, weird thought because I don't know. It's just, it doesn't make sense to my 10-year-old brain. It turns out as I'm almost 40, it doesn't make sense now either. So.
Or maybe you just still have a 10-year-old brain. I mean, I'm like 14.
It's possible. You hired me here, so I don't know.
That's true. No, what's crazy about that is like over the last couple decades, as we've been able to like see farther and farther into space, like you see all these galaxies, and it's like you start to realize the expanse of the universe, and the universe is the same thing. It exists eternally in every direction as far as we know it, and as difficult and as impossible as that is to grasp in our minds, it's like we're in it.
Yeah. We're going to be a part of it. And
I mean, we are already in it.
Yeah.
And even though it exists, like eternity exists out of the constructs of time that we live in, that is the destiny for our soul. Like that is what we have to look forward to. And even though you can't really grasp it, we're in it. How we live this temporary life that we've been given, it matters. Like we can invest things that are temporary into things that have eternal value. And I've always loved that concept that God gives us that gift of taking what happens in the 78 to 79 years that the average life expectancy is now in America, which ironically, I always point this out, women live longer than men on average. There's this weird study that shows that right-handed people live longer than left-handed people.
Wow.
So I'm 0 for 2 on those things. It's like I've
it's
only got a few
dominance.
It's something like that. Yeah. And I'm on the wrong end of everything there. It's terrible. But yeah, I mean, we've got this limited amount of time that goes by so quickly to invest in things that have eternal significance. And I want to just lean in today into the idea that we have the chance to invest in significant things that have eternal value. And I want to make sure that our lives are focused on the same things, because when we're united on those things, it helps us live into the purpose that God created us for.
Yeah, I just think that it's really important to consider that, because otherwise you just kind of spend your life walking around, wandering, aimless, without any kind of a plan or any kind of a real purpose, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to stand before God someday after you've taken your last breath and be found wanting, right? You want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. That's the whole point of what we're talking about today, to avoid that ultimate awkward moment when you're standing before God. And we're going to be held into account for what we did with what God gave us.
Yeah.
I think it was Rick Warren that said this years ago. We'll be held into account for two things, ultimately. It's an oversimplification, but it's real.
Yeah.
We'll be held into account when we stand before God in regard to what we did with Jesus. Did I put my trust in him? Did I ask forgiveness? Was I fully surrendered? And then we'll be held responsible for what did we do with the gifts that God gave us? Like, did we waste it?
Right.
Did we waste this opportunity that we have? Or did we actually invest in things that were eternally significant? Yeah. And it's sobering because it makes you think about, okay, where am I spending my time? Like, what is it that I did today that actually mattered for eternity? Like, if you start walking through your schedule and analyzing it in those terms, it starts to bring a little bit more significance to things that we don't think about probably often enough.
I think we just, it's pretty easy. I just find that a lot of people don't live with a sense of urgency about much of anything.
Yes.
And that's, I think that's part of just the the time that we find ourselves in 2024, what the world looks like.
Yeah.
Everything's so instantaneous that it's like really hard to think about what eternal future looks like.
Yes.
That's a really difficult concept, I think, especially in 2024.
Yeah.
But it's really important to consider the everyday, because that's what, even like, let's just say, like, I've lived about half of my life so far, and I'm right here in the middle of this timeline. Today, one day out of this huge, long life that I'm going to live, really in the whole scheme of things, is pretty minor, but it's one day after another. Everything stacks on top of each other. Everything multiplies quickly. And if I find myself on one day not spending my time wisely or doing what is needed to help bring people to Jesus, which is the point of all of this, right?
Yes.
Then it ends up being multiple days and weeks and months and years. And next thing you know, you've spent decades.
You've wasted time.
Spinning your tires in the mud and accomplishing nothing, ultimately.
I have so much conviction right now. Jeez, Corey. I watched the Golden Bachelorette last night. Probably should have just spent time talking to my husband instead. Or maybe I should have read more books with my kids.
There it is. Krista's being completely overcome with guilt and shame in this moment right now. Yeah.
Well, look, it's not like anybody nails that. I mean, there's no such thing as getting that right all the time. And it's life is crazy, and take it like enjoying the moments is helpful too. So that's not to say every moment needs to be spent working towards a goal. Yeah. That's not always true, but
it is interesting though. It says in the book of James that our life it's like a mist. Like it is here today and it is gone tomorrow. And you start to realize that the farther you get in life. I'm 46. I just had that moment this last week where the memories popped up in my phone of photos from back then. It was my son's first day of kindergarten, which you just went through. You just had this.
Well, yeah.
And I'm going, that was like 11 years ago now. And I'm going, how is this even possible?
Right.
And I'm looking at Carter, how little he was, looking at how young I looked in that picture. It was fantastic. Like, oh, I was young once. And you just realize, it's like you go back to that moment. It's like, that was yesterday. Like, are you kidding me? And so you begin to realize life really is short. And we have a limited amount of time to make an eternal impact and do things that have lasting eternal significance. And so I just want to lean into that today. And honestly, we have someone who's going to join us for 5 good minutes who maybe has perfected this. He's mastered the art of living really the perfect lifestyle. So with that, welcome. Let's give it up for Remington Anksorus.
Yeah. Okay.
Remington, welcome to the Bold Moves podcast, my friend. It's great to have you.
What's up? How's it going?
Oh my goodness. He's back.
Brought the peace sign back.
Oh,
that's going to be a thing every time he's on here.
Well, I think we all need to adopt that. We've just said Remington has perfected it, right? Perfected it all.
He's perfected it all. So what's up, Remington? It's good to have you.
I'm pretty fallible. So not perfected anything at all.
We just said you were perfect. You were the perfect person.
Well,
ruined everything.
Greatly disappointed now. Thank you very much.
Hey, so you were talking at Crossroads this last week about eternity, about the one future that God is calling us to. I mean, drop some knowledge on us, man. Like, let's talk about how to stay focused on that, because that's what matters.
I mean, the future is always something we're thinking about, right? I mean, since I was a kid, I was always worried, like, what's God's plan for my life? Or like, what am I going to do? What am I going to be when I grow up? How am I going to do great things? You have so much promise, right? And I think, as we talked this last week, and we're wrapping this series up of United, and like the future is something really, really important, because I think it really is determined by your perspective, like what you believe. And what you say, like what that foundation is. Because if you don't have a good foundation, the future could seem pretty bleak and hopeless, right? If you don't really have something that is eternal, we believe as people of faith, eternal, hope and promise are things that are kind of far off, because the world has a way of just beating us down, right?
Oh, yeah.
Has a way of just, throwing stuff up in our face. And so something that was really cool that I got to share this last weekend with our campuses was that there are people in this world who have faith that don't believe. which it sounds really weird to say that, right?
That's wild to think about. Yes.
I just heard a recent story of our group that came back from Ecuador. We build churches in Ecuador.
Some go down there every year. Happening there. Yep.
And there was a woman named Elvira, and Elvira owned land right on the main road in this little town where they wanted to build a church. And the way they found out about it is you have to go door to door because there's no like realtors. It's not like the Association of Realtors is there listing people's properties. You just knock on people's doors and see if you could buy their land. And so they knocked on her door, and she was like, "I'll give you a little piece of land for the $10,000 that you have." And they're like, "We need 3 times that much." And she's like, "Yeah, I don't think so." Well, like her son, not her little, he's an adult as well. He had heard the conversation. He said, maybe like we don't believe, but like maybe God might be trying to use us. Like we're not people of faith.
That's amazing.
We have no faith. We don't believe. And she's like, "I don't know about that." And a month and a half went by where she was kind of talking back and forth with the pastor wanting to plant there. And another one of her sons heard another conversation that she was having. His name was Erwin. And Erwin's like, "Well, I've got land. You can buy my land." But it wasn't on like the main road. It was like obscure, kind of out there. And they're like, it's not really the best place for it. Long story short, this woman comes around and she's like, "I will sell you the land 3 times as much as I want to for the 10 grand that you have, because I know you don't have any more." Wow. And Erwin's like, "And you know what? I'm going to give you my land for free, and you guys can do whatever you want on it, because we just feel like this is God like trying to get our attention. Like we're not people of faith, but like
that's incredible.
You knock on our door, and we can't stop thinking about this." And so,
that's powerful.
I mean, like, so the cool thing is, right? Like our team literally built a church on this plot of land that was given by a woman who does not believe.
That's wild.
And her son gave a piece of land, and they're building a tilapia farm on it so that they could teach people how to like, sustain life and, grow things. And so like, I sit here and it like creates a tension, right? Because we do think sometimes in our mind, we think we've got it all together. Like we're people of faith. We love Jesus. Like, thanks for building me up before this talk. But I have a tension in my soul because I sit there and I try to think to myself, like, what are like plots of land that I'm not willing to give up to God?
Oh, that's really good.
And like, I'm probably holding something back. Mm-hmm. Whether that's my time or my talent or my treasure. And so like, it's kind of been a story that's kind of stuck with me just after I heard it, because it creates a tension there where I'm like, am I really like focused on the future?
Yep.
And so I've kind of been just kind of wrestling with, but also like challenging myself to like step out and find out what are those plots that I'm not giving up? What are those plots that I'm kind of keeping over here for myself? So
that's a really good word, Rem. I always love the stories that come out of those mission trips, especially to Ecuador. I don't know what it is about that place, but I had a very similar experience there, Remington. This was years ago when we came down to work and just help the kids and help these churches grow. And we're not doing anything except just like be show and tell. It's like, oh, look at the Americans are here. it's like, okay. And you don't really feel like you're doing anything. And at the end of the week, this church, they honored us. They had us come up and they gave us these little wooden medals that they had made and put them around our necks. Yeah. And it's like you bend over, receive the medal. And it's like, what's happening right now? I just had this overwhelming sensation of, I haven't done a single thing here. Like there is no honor for me in this. Like the faith that they had, to your point, Remington, the faith that they had, the way that God was moving in their lives and in their community because of their faith was inspiring to me. And somehow our group is getting honored in front of everybody. Like, oh my goodness. No, I have so much to learn from these people. Sure. These are the ones who are leading the charge. And it's because they're focusing on things that have eternal significance. They're more focused. Yeah. So what are we holding on to? It's a great question, Rem.
Yeah, well, and I think, the crazy part is like we work in ministry, right? And so like we work so hard, or if somebody's like volunteering, like they give their time and stuff like that. And it seems like it's such a huge sacrifice. And then I think like this lady's giving up random land, on the side of the road. They build a church structure, and 83 people show up because of it. Like on the first Sunday that they open, and I'm like, is it that? Like it's that simple, right? Yeah. Like it's that simple. Like whatever God has given me, I just need to use it for him. And I think that's what, for me, it took me a while to figure it out, because I went through a lot of things career-wise, trying to figure out where God wants me, or what I'm supposed to do with my life. And I'm reminded in Philippians, it talks about, how Jesus is raised to the highest place, sits at the hand of God the Father. He intercedes on our behalf. Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess. It's that great, glorious line. But the beginning of it, it says, because he was obedient.
Yeah.
He was obedient. He took what God gave him and he used it as God asked him to. And so as people of faith, I think sometimes we worry about our future when really it's about our perspective. All of this is God's.
Yeah.
He simply gave it to us and he calls us to be obedient to him.
That's so good.
So where you end up in the grand scheme of things, if your perspective is off base, where you end up is not really the important thing, right? You're heading in the wrong direction. It's where you're focused. And if you're focused on God and using what he's given you, that's going to be a bright future. It's going to be one filled with hope.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really, really cool.
I love that. I'm reminded in this moment, I was just talking to somebody about this earlier this week. We are truly stewards of the resources that God gives us. Nothing is ours.
Oh, yeah.
We don't get to take any of this with us, except ironically, the things that we invest that are temporary in eternity. And so, man, it puts things in perspective. That's a good word. That's a good word for everybody to focus on today. Am I focusing on the right things? Am I investing in eternity? Remington, for the person who has it all completely together, thank you for sharing that wisdom with us. It was fantastic.
No problem. I don't have it all together.
Are you going to leave with the same peace sign today, or do you have a different exit?
Peace.
See you, Rem. Thanks for joining.
See ya.
Hey, those were 5 great minutes with Remington. He's always great to have on. I can't believe he signed on with that peace sign again. He's really onto something there. He has branded himself well. I like what he's done there.
Yes,
yeah, it's good marketing.
Definitely the 1970s called. They want
they
the
were more
sign
like
back?
This, though, weren't they?
Oh, okay.
Instead
Okay.
of
I
this,
think so.
He's turned it 90 degrees.
Is this 90s or millennial?
I don't know. Whatever it is, Remington is bringing it back, and I love it. I love it.
Or maybe not bringing it back. I don't know. I'm not sure.
If he does bring it back, we're claiming it started here on the Bold Moves podcast.
Okay, very good.
Changing culture, one peace sign at a time. Let's talk about what he brought to the table there. I love stories like what he shared, like the power of someone who's just being obedient and doing things that last for eternity. Did you guys have any thoughts or comments about what he was talking about?
Yeah, sure. So when he was talking about what happened in Ecuador, which is an amazing story.
Oh, it's fantastic.
That makes me really proud that we're sending groups of people from Crossroads to be part of that.
Because everybody who goes on those trips gets to experience that firsthand.
Absolutely.
Yes,
for sure. So but it does make me think it just kind of spurred a memory from me that, the lady who's giving some land in order to be used, the church that I grew up in, way back in the day had a softball team, and the softball team was like a big deal and it was awesome. So there's a softball field on the church property.
Okay.
And it was a big field, and ultimately what happened is nobody cares about softball anymore. So
it's a pandemic.
Somewhere along the way, somebody had the idea, because it's in the middle of the country, what if we went in there and farmed it and then sold what was farmed back to and put the profits back to a charity.
Oh, that's cool.
That's what was done. I think the food was given to food banks, and then money was given to charity. So it's literally taking, and it's just something simple, but it's taking land that was no longer used, that was just growing weeds for the most part, and putting it to good use.
Yeah, and being intentional.
Yeah, that's cool.
And focusing that on something that has eternal significance.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Kristen, what do you have? Any thoughts there?
I really liked how he said, what am I holding back? And well, we said it's our time, our talent, our treasure. Yeah. There are people that just give their time.
Yeah.
They're just always available. They're always there for you, or they rearrange their schedule to be there for people. My grandma was one of those people. She just was extremely real. She was always present. She always she came to anything that we were doing, and not just like her family, her friends. She showed up for the church and all that. And she's in heaven now. She's gone, and I just think there's no way she was not rewarded for that, just for being present and with her people.
So that's a great point, because I think a lot of times we think about investing in eternity as just like a financial thing. Like that's not the only eternal investment.
Oh, yeah,
it's
for sure.
definitely your time. It's definitely the talent and the gifts that God gives you, and just being intentional. Like, what am I doing today to invest for eternity? And if it is just spending time, like taking time to give somebody a call or shoot them a text that encourages them and lifts them up. Like, those are the things that have eternal significance. Using your gifts to serve others. Those are the things that have eternal significance. Yes, if you can give generously and fund things that are advancing the kingdom, yes, of course. I've found time and time again that the people that are living intentionally with the kingdom in mind and focusing on investing in things that do truly have eternal significance, those are the people who are most fulfilled in life. Those are the people who are living life to the fullest, really claiming the purpose that God created them for. And they're winning. I mean, they're the ones winning at life. And what's funny is that it changes all the rules that the world gives us for winning. Because to be clear, using Ecuador as an example again, when we visited Ecuador, we're at this church where they're honoring us for what we did, which I feel was nothing.
Yeah.
To be very clear, those people were some of the happiest, joy-filled people I've ever met. And by all standards, by every single metric that we would measure with, in our culture of what would make you happy, what are the things in life that you pursue? They had none of those things, none of those things, right? And yet there they are, filled with joy, and it's because they're focusing on eternal things, and then they're investing in things that truly matter. And I think it's really important, even if for nothing else, just the joy and fulfillment and satisfaction that comes from that. It matters when we truly are intentional about making sure that, man, doing our best every day to take time to focus on truly investing in something that has eternal significance.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I think that just thinking about our culture, it's like a cultural epidemic, the way that we have just flooded our minds and our eyes and all of our senses with so many things that are so temporary.
Yes.
And honestly, like, oh man, like our phones, we bring this up all the time,
but it comes back to that stuff.
It's just screen time, and it's just something that's right there in front of you always. And it's just a distraction of what's really, truly important. And human connection is so important, and we do so little of that. And I think that's what in a culture like what happens in Ecuador, I think that's probably one of the big keys, right? Is people being together,
community,
and spending time together and doing things together. And we're talking about doing things that are future minded, and what's doing things that are important for the kingdom forever. I think that's important to think about that, how we do all of that together too. That's what happens at church, at Crossroads every single week, is that people are coming together, playing a different role. Everybody's got a different role to play. And it all comes together to create an experience to invite people to come and meet Jesus and to be connected with him. And to do that together, and to all be pointed in one direction towards the future. And that's the most fulfilling thing, at least that I've experienced, is being part of experiences like that.
It's real.
Yeah.
I think the last thought I have is, I think the trap we fall into our culture is amusement and apathy. And when you break down those words, like amusement literally means no thinking, like you're giving no thought.
Yeah.
So what a tragedy to walk through life just not thinking at all, not thinking with any intentionality about the time that we have, the limited opportunities that we have to invest in eternity, to just drift through life in that way. And apathy is the same. It's no passion. Like, I'm not passionate about things of eternity. I'm not giving any thought to things of eternity. I'm just death scrolling, watching Netflix. Let's hit hard, watching sports. I watched football for 72 straight hours opening weekend. I'm just kidding. But it's like, we get down all these rabbit trails, and you realize I have not been intentional about doing anything that actually mattered. And so, that's shame on us if we get through life and you live years and decades just falling down that trap. There's something powerful about staying focused on things that have eternal significance, and that is where life is lived to the fullest. So,
for sure.
In wrapping that up, I mean, we talk about making the bold moves. The bold move might just be, hey, be intentional today, tomorrow, make it a daily thing. I am going to do something today that has eternal significance and make the most of the time that God has given me.
Yeah, that's good.
There it is. I think that's how we wrap this up. Guys, when it's time to make your move, be bold. We'll see you next time.